question on how I solder my feeders to the track. As you can see, I use, or I like to use, 18 gauge stranded wire, and my bus that I run is 14 gauge. I normally cut into the bus, tie or wind the feeder around the bus, solder it, and then put a piece of heat shrink over the solder joint. The reason I like to use 18 gauge feeders over 22 is that you'll get more current going to the track, and if all your track is soldered, you'll need to use less feeders for your connections, and your DCC will run a lot more stable. Alright, as you can see, I've already placed two of the feeders through, and these are going to be for my auto throw. For that switch right there, I'm running hairs on the tortoise switch machines, and I'm enabling the auto throw option, and I'll be soldering right into there first, and then I'll cut the section of track to create the isolated section. Once you have the feeder stripped, I will pre-tin it just to make things a little easier. As you can see, I like to pre-tin the track at the point where the feeder will attach to the track, and I have pre-fluxed this spot right here, and the next thing I'll do is put a little drop of solder right where the feeder touches the track. One thing I do is I'll use 2 cotton balls, and I will drop them in a little cup of water, and once they're wet, I'll just squeeze out the excess water and place 1 cotton ball on either side of the solder joint. That way the heat will not, from the solder, will not travel along the rail and melt the ties. The next thing to do is to get a plier and then put a 90-degree bend on the soldered feeder wire, or the pre-tinned feeder wire, creating in essence like a railroad spike, and I'll show you that. Alright, there you can see I've created in essence 2 feeder railroad spikes. Just put a little 90-degree bend on the wire, on the tin wire itself. Once you've created your spike, also you may want to trim the solder, the tip of your long spike, so that it really does create a small head that you can attach to the side of the rail. Put a little bend in it so you have some pressure onto the track, like so. And just spike the track down, just like that. Remember to go back and put the wet cotton balls on either side of where you're going to be soldering, so that now your only hot spot will be in the center of your solder, and the heat will not travel down the rail and melt your ties. Incidentally, this is the solder point where I attach the main feeder, and remember, this is going to be a feeder to power this isolated track to work with the auto throw that will automatically throw that switch right there. And then all you do is just hold the solder tip to your rail nail solder feeder, maybe you may call it, and just solder it right onto the track. And once that's done, you can go ahead and remove the cotton balls. I also like to get a jar with some denatured alcohol and a toothbrush, and just go ahead and once you've soldered the joint, just clean it off a little bit. Get the make sure you get the flux off the rail, and that will prevent corrosion in the future. Just clean up the solder joint, and then you should have a one nice little solder joint right there. When you paint the track and you ballast it, you will hardly tell that there's a solder joint to the track.